Well, if you're a social media user, lately you may have noticed changes to the way Instagram operates. Recent updates to its algorithm and apparent effort to catch up to some of TikTok's video dominance seems to have frustrated users, including super user Kylie Jenner. She's among those who are trying to push back against it. She shared this message, quote, "Make Instagram again," to her 362 million followers. So for more on what's at play here, we have reached Mohit Rajans in Toronto. He's a writer and digital media expert. Hey, Mohit, it's good to have you with us.
Hello, Artie.
It's good to have you with us for this. And, first, for a lot of people who might not be keeping as close track of this, break it down for us. Why are other social media platforms trying to be like TikTok?
Sure. So I think we're in a situation now where in 2020, we spoke a lot about social media and the ills of fake news. And then in 2021, there was a lot about whistleblowing and privacy. Now in 2022, we're in a situation where a lot of these big tech companies are kind of finished with the fighting, and they're fighting the new kid on the block. Even though TikTok has been around since 2017, it's starting to gain such a large market share that these big tech companies can no longer ignore the bite out of their actual revenue and the attention economy that it's actually taking. So TikTok has started to present itself as not only competition, but definitely something that many aspects of the business are starting to worry about.
Yeah, and so, when we look at Facebook, for example, and it saw its revenue shrink in 3 months up until the end of June. It expects the same sort of trend in the next quarter. Meanwhile, you're watching, as you mentioned, TikTok continue to grow. So what's the fight for relevancy? How deeply centered is this alignment between Instagram trying to be like TikTok?
Well, I think that we have to remember that Facebook/Meta owns this ecosystem between WhatsApp and Instagram. So the real goal for them is to build this place where you come for everything. Whereas TikTok has started to move away from being this dance-only, trend-only Gen Z platform and trying to be a little bit more for everyone. So the reality is that people just want you to spend more time on their apps. And the question is, can Facebook get out of the mud when it comes down to all of the issues it's had from everything, from how does it hit the right generation? How does it not have their most active users start to complain about the network on their network and the app? And how does TikTok start to become a little bit more congruent with what's happening in North America? Remember, TikTok has been fueled with a lot of bad press in the past 3 to 4 years, and it's managed to survive despite it.
We were mentioning off the top about Kylie Jenner, a super user, 362 million followers, called for Instagram to be Instagram again. She said, "I want to see cute pictures of my friends," saying the algorithm was kind of diverting her from that among all of the other users. Of course, anyone will see that there's more recommended posts rather than the people you necessarily follow. Is the push here to become closer to TikTok, or the apparent push, because that's what it seems like is happening with the focus on reels and more video content, is that going to backfire? And we are kind of seeing that with Kylie Jenner, but the entire purpose of this was to see still images in the beginning.
Yeah, well, I think that this is sort of the generational I want my MTV moment, right? And so we're starting to think a little bit more about the fact that these platforms have to find a way to evolve. And unfortunately, not everybody is going to like that in the process. But there's an underlying factor to what Kylie Jenner is doing that we can't ignore here. And that is that she's gained this popularity on Instagram and built a community and business off of Instagram and her followers. If those followers aren't engaging with her content, she's not making as much money. Now, don't get me wrong. She's at the top of her game. That might not affect her as much. But there are a lot of people in business that have spent many years. 2010 is when Instagram's been around since. They spent a lot of years investing, some of the efforts to make a large following on Instagram. And that's where a lot of the frustration is starting to go. There's not this transparency necessarily after, TikTok's only been around for 5 years, and I think there's got to be a gap that has to be closed for people to feel motivated to continue to use these platforms.
And that leads me to the final question in a broader sense. You've got this entire career of being an influencer that's being created primarily with social media platforms, but really with Instagram. So how could TikTok disrupt that?
Well, I think they already have. They've already sort of got into the fact that you can do social media shopping on their platforms, and their feeds are starting to cater to niches and communities a little bit more actively. So I think the disruption that TikTok has already caused, you saw YouTube fail or start and fail with their attempt at doing video that were a little bit short and more to the TikTok flavor. Look, I look at it in the same way as we look at pop artists, right? Or hip hop artists. We always hear the big one artist and they have their moment. And I think TikTok's having their moment right now is setting the standard, but I don't think by any means they're the only game in town. And we'll start to see newer social media companies come up and bubble up to the surface very soon.
Mohit, thanks for this discussion. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mohit Rajans is a writer and digital media expert, and we reached him today in Toronto.